and foremost, I would like to start my presentation with just underlining once again that if you are at the crisis right now and need help, there are options which you could use at the moment. For example, you can go to Samaritans.org and some other local helplines. And not only they have 24/7 hotlines for talking, they also have chats option, which is really good for people who don't like to talk on the phone, who feel uncomfortable about it. And also, you can always walk into a local ER even if you don't speak local language. I also would like to give a disclaimer that Dragonfly Mental Health and I myself here we're not a healthcare provider. So the information provided today does not qualify as a medical advice and doesn't substitute for speaking to a medical professional. So today we're going to talk about Dragonfly Mental Health. Then we'll go through basics burnout. And I would like to underline once again that we're giving the peer perspective on burnout. So it's not a talk about how to change the system. This talk is not about it. This talk is about how to help you as a person and how can you help yourself and maybe how you can help a couple of others who are next to you. Then we'll talk about what helps in burnout, and then we'll finalize it with a group discussion. So burnout. What's important to underline that mental health is actually a spectrum. So it's not just healthy or not healthy. There's a whole spectrum of the things and of conditions. So first of all, it's mental health. Well, the person is striving and performing and feeling the best. So when the stress kicks in, when it's managed properly during when we deal with the stress, we still function properly if the stress is manageable. And if the stress is not manageable, or if it's been there for a very long time, then distress can come. Then if distress is not taken care of, so in distress, we tend to eat less or to eat more than we used to sleep more or less than we used to, or which is not normal for us. And things like this. So if this is not taken care of, then disease kicks in. And in case of burnout, eventually it can manifest in depression or in any other things. And then if this is not taken care of, then the crisis hits. And then person may have suicidality behaviors or thoughts and things like this. So in order for all of us not to hit crisis and potentially not even to hit a disease, we need to take care of a burnout right in between distress and disease situation. And that's where the burnout is. What I would like to underline here, and it's important to understand that scientific settings are unique, whether we're talking about academia, whether we're talking about industry. In both of the cases, while we were studying and moving to industry, so universities are typically supporting master students or bachelor students because they're considered to be still kids, so they need more support. And then universities and companies don't really take care of us when we're transitioning from PhD student to postdoc or from PhD student to industry researcher and stuff like this. And of course, academia comes with the fact that there are cultural and systemic barriers, and it makes scientists less likely to seek support. And overall, postgraduate education and a follow-up career path in industry or in academia, they all come with unique pressures and a culture deriving from academic stigmatized environment. WHO, World Health Organization, defines burnout as it says it's a syndrome, so it recognizes it as a syndrome resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. It may manifest as a feeling of energy depletion or exhaustion and or increased mental distance from one's job, or feelings of negativism or cynicism to one's job, and reduced professional efficacy. Who can suffer from burnout? Essentially anyone doing a goal-directed activity, not only scientists, not only researchers, not only PhD students. If you're a volunteer and you're doing goal-directed activity, you can be an athlete, parent, caregiver, clinician, all these people and occupations and professions, people can suffer from burnout. What are the core components and symptoms? There are two core components. First one is the self-reflection. So essentially, when the person is hitting burnout, they may experience emotional or physical exhaustion. And when it comes to their own self-reflection component, reduced emotional regulation can manifest in behaviors like binge drinking, self-harm in hair pulling disorder, cutting, and other kind of things. So then, of course, it can be cognitive impairment when you feel like you read 20 pages or you read 2 pages and you still don't know what it was about, so you have to reread it again. The same comes with the reduced memory or attention to the things and sleeping problems. And the interactions component can manifest as being easily irritable, can be manifesting as withdrawal and distancing from your peers, from your colleagues, from your family and friends. You may detect that you have reduced performance. Also, you may feel that you're not that flexible anymore, and you can be cynical about your work. And It's important to underline that burnout is situational. What it means? That burnout can be one-dimensional. For example, burnout can be work-related, but it may not affect other work, or other like bench work. Or for example, it may not affect your personal life, and you can just feel burned out and be burned out about the work. Also, maybe a person struggling from burnout may be able to contain or manage symptoms. So we tend to call these people high functioning, but it's rather probably the surrounding is not allowing them to actually show that they're burned out. And there's a common misconception that if it's non-lethal, so I have to learn how to live with that. And of course, we do not support this opinion. We don't want people to feel that, I'm still managing, so like I don't want to get a support. I don't need a support because I'm still managing. So essentially, it's like then the question comes up. So what would be the fine line when you're not managing anymore? So instead of getting treatment and support and help uh, while you're still managing, you shouldn't wait probably until you cannot manage anymore. Also, of course, every day may be different and require different management. And sometimes we're coping more and better, sometimes we're coping less, and it doesn't have to be constant all the time. Burnout is not static or inevitable. It sometimes can be more burnout or less burnout or things like this. And also it's you can avoid it. And now I'd like to talk about the causes, and there are multiple causes, of course. And researchers talk about it doesn't necessarily have to be one cause. There can be many more. And of course, when there are more than one, it's more and more difficult for people to deal with it. First, and like WHO has already underlined to us, that chronic stress relating to work and other ongoing activities, and the stress is not managed well. However, there are other things. For example, the lack of control. It doesn't really matter whether it's a real lack of control or perceived lack of control. It still can cause a burnout. When we're talking about the real objective lack of control is that, for example, you promised your collaborators to deliver something, but then the supply chain was affected, so you didn't get the EPIs, therefore you cannot ship the samples further down the line. Lack of control, yes, may lead to burnout, yes. The perceived lack of control, of course, is sometimes when you just feel like you're not on top of the things, and like in reality things may not be as bad, but this is how you feel it, and it also can lead you to a burnout. Of course, important to underline, bullying or toxic environment at work and relationship, microaggressions, which all of us once in a while experience, of course. These things, they lower our self-esteem or our mood, and eventually our wish to stay at this working place, and they're of course leading to a burnout. Work-life imbalance is one of the things which are not good in case of developing the burnout. And of course, it also comes to the lack of control, that extra job duties but limited authority. So if you are a PhD student and you have already a lot on your plate and your PI tells you that there's more you should do, you're not in the authority and you don't feel that you're in authority to say no, then of course it will lead to the point of you having too much and potentially can lead to a burnout. Disconnection from values is something which we face, or some of us face, when we're working, for example, with animal. So when we're doing animal experiments, and if you're not an authority to say that your beliefs are not allowing you to, or your moral values are not allowing you to work with animals, you'll still do it and you'll struggle through it. So this is something which can lead to a burnout. Lack of identity beyond work is something which a lot of scientists struggle, because we self-identify ourselves as a scientist. And if we don't have anything outside of us being scientists, if we don't have something to basically stand on, each and every time we fail the experiment in scientific path, we will feel like a personal failure, which is not the case. Science is a lot about failure. Experiments are a lot about failure. So this lack of identity beyond work is really essential. And finally, I'd like to underline this, is sometimes non-solvable essence of work. So if you have a long project, 3, 4, 5 years, and you do have a deadline when it comes to your PhD or a postdoc contract, but you don't have a deadline, like you cannot post this deadline on the nature of your work, or some questions are just at the very moment of science development are unsolvable. So constantly every day facing some questions which you cannot solve is something which can easily lead to burnout. And the longer you deal with it, the more the chances are to develop one. So next, I'd like to talk a bit about burnout cycles. So when you know about the burnout cycle, you can potentially track yourself somewhere there and see, okay, here I am at this very point of burnout. So your solutions will be based on at the point where you are at the burnout cycle. So as we talked, there are some causes which leads to symptoms, and symptoms, of course, worsen situational causes. And all in, it leads to lower employee satisfaction and accomplishment/productivity. And if we're talking about the components of burnout cycle, I'd like to start from exhaustion, because all of us once in a while experience that. So when we feel exhausted, at certain point, we're hitting the bar where we're saying, you know what, I don't care anymore. So then we're hitting cynicism. And if you stop caring anymore, you also will take yourself out of the community discussions, journal clubs, beer hours with your colleagues. So you will withdraw yourself socially, which will eventually, taken together with exhaustion and cynicism and all in, will lead to a lack of concentration when it comes to work. And of course, when there is a lack of concentration, at certain point, you'll be inefficient. And at certain point of this inefficiency, you will not have the work you plan to do done, which will lead to work extension. And then when the workload is extending, then it leads to exhaustion again. So each and every time you hit this circle again, it gets worsened. And it's important to underline that you can break out of this cycle as long as you understand that you're somewhere there. Statistics that up to 76%, according to 2020 studies, and it was asked in 2019, so that was pre-COVID actually, 76% experience burnout at the job at least sometimes. So we know that it did worsen during the pandemic for scientists, and 70% felt stressed and fatigued, and 35% felt angry. So essentially 50+% that they're actually considering changing their career and either retiring earlier or leaving academia. But things are not that bad. So here are the things which can be done, and a lot of tiny things can be sort of planted and grown, and then there is a chance that you'll feel relieved. So there's several components to what can be done. First of all, education and culture change. So talks like this and participation of people. So hopefully you'll go home today or you go back to the lab, and during the coffee break with your colleagues, you can actually tell them, you know what, like we all have burnout at a certain point. Let's not stigmatize it. Let's talk about it. So it's important that there is a destigmatization and education about this topic. This part leads to a social support, because when you feel that you're comfortable talking to your colleagues about it, most likely you'll be supported. Of course, sometimes we do have toxic colleagues. This is unavoidable, but there are peers who will support you. It's essential to balance rest and effort at work. For example, we strongly encourage everyone to take complete vacations and not small crumbs of it here and there, so you actually feel disconnected from work for a little while. We suggest that you commit to take in regular breaks, and it's important that you understand that breaks are different. So if you feel like going to have a break, like I need to have a break, so I need a break from writing and it will be a bench work, that's not actually a break. This is a change of your activity, but you are not resting. And so please keep in mind that what you need and when during a break is rest. So we suggest that maybe you can have like 50 minutes of work plus 10 minutes break, or half an hour and 5 minutes break, whatever fits you better. You could experiment a little bit with this, but of course some breaks will be necessary, like going to restroom, eating or drinking, and some are efficient. For example, different work-related activities, but please focus on the joyful ones. Take a coffee break with a colleague, go outside, I don't know, do something which is actually joyful, which will make your brain think that it's resting. Improving basic health is essential. So of course it's mindfulness, sleep, and exercise. I wish I'd tell you something easier like a magic pill. No, there's still, these things are essential. I'm coming from a former Soviet Union cluster, so of course things like mindfulness did not really exist there, at least not in my environment. And a couple of years ago, I just got dragged into mindfulness, like guided relaxation and breathing exercises and all these kind of things, and they do help. So if you're a skeptic and you're thinking, oh, whether it's going to work or not, yes, it will work. So please try it out. And improving work communication. So try to negotiate better working hours. Try to improve work accommodations. COVID showed all of us, including our PIs and bosses, that we actually can work from home at least part-time. We've got a managing upward talk on our YouTube channel. So if you feel uncomfortable or not empowered enough to discuss the things with your PI, and if you're a junior scientist, please have a look. There are multiple suggestions and workshop how you can do it. So yeah, essentially that was it. And the other advice, as I have already mentioned, is please don't internalize burnout as a failure. It's a consequence of a system that expects a person to work long hours and sacrifice their personal lives. Try to create ways to detach from stress and normalize conversations about mental health. Try to fight isolation and treat yourself like a tree. So it's sun, air, nutrients, and whatever nutrients for you are, whether it's going outside and exercising or binge watching series on Netflix, both are your nutrients. So with this, I'd like to finish my talk. I would like to apologize again for a bit of a mess on the presentation. I would also like to ask you to please fill the survey. If you have a couple of comments, help us to improve this talk. We're constantly working on improving our programs. So if you have any comments, please let us know.
Thank you so much, Olya. And there's so much in that talk that I think we could probably have an entire conference around mental health.
I reduced it so much. Like, what can you do in 15 minutes?
Oh, I know. We've got a couple of questions, so I'm just going to field those from the audience. But after this session, please do pop the link to your survey in the main event chat so that people can
Awesome.
fill that
Thank
out.
You.
So we've had an anonymous question, which I thought might happen around this because it's such a sensitive subject. And this person's asked if you spot, armed with this knowledge, that you have a colleague who is in that social withdrawal phase, that first phase of burnout, and you can see the signs, how would you then approach helping or supporting them?
Oh God, thank you so much for asking this. First of all, we regularly get this question, and this question is, the whole topic for another seminar. What I would recommend, and briefly what I can say, first of all, internalize the fact that it's not your responsibility to help them. It may, however, be your problem, of course, if it's they're your colleague, but it's not your responsibility. And it's extremely important that you differentiate these two things in your mind. And what you can tell them is just to be open. Just say, I am here. So you don't have to tell about them about them, but you can tell them how you feel. So you can tell them that you are worried that they're in the phase of withdrawal, that you are worried that you stand here, and if they feel that they would need to talk to you or they want to talk to you, then they could reach out. So you can only sort of like underline where you are, and you are wanting to help them. So this is something which we usually say. And of course, it can go to next levels of, you are suspecting that person has suicidal thoughts and behaviors, and this is another topic. But in any case, it's recommended to be open about it and say that I am worried, I am suspecting that things are not well for you. What can I do to help you? How can I support you?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had two questions that are sort of the same, so I'm going to roll them into one. So Sam from Hello Bio has asked whether there's any resources that are available for PIs or supervisors that can educate them in what burnout is, what to look for in their postdocs or their PhD students. And then Matthew Wilkinson, one of our attendees, has asked what changes can then staff at universities and institutions then make to help prevent burnout in students and staff. So kind of resources to help spot the signs, and then if they spot them, how as a member of staff responsible for students would you then deal with that?
I got this. Now you're putting me in the horrible situation of self-advertising. So we got a talk on YouTube about burnout, and of course it has it underlines more. It's like it's accessible for everyone. It has there are many resources talking about burnout in general, but not that many talking about burnout in academia. And typically the publications focus on statistics and on causes, but solutions, which we talk today about, is something which is up to you as to a PI or as a team lead. Try to have a look at the presentation we got on YouTube, and also the symptoms which I talk about today. This is something which you could actually see in your students, and if you're not sure, just ask them. And then when it comes to creating the environment where like it be more supportive for your colleagues and for your mentees, then it's not a one man's job. It's one man's job to ruin the environment. Yes, one person can easily do it. But creating the supportive environment is something which is not like an overnight process, and you need to find a supportive teams. You need to hire supportive people. You need to hire people who are open about it, who destigmatize the topic about mental health, who themselves appreciate work-life balance, so they will not impose imbalance on others. So there are ways, basically, and I don't think I can cover all of them. So it's like, I think it's a subject of consulting, probably. I hope this semi answers the question.
Yeah, I think that's so important about it be it the importance of it being a team effort and the importance of it being a cultural change that everyone has to buy into. And then, yeah, absolutely gaining that external perspective from a consultant can be so helpful to uncover things that you haven't seen. And I think also have colleagues be more honest, talking to someone that is external as well, if you're looking to uncover issues as well.
I remember how this happened in my previous lab, actually, and I think it's a wonderful example. I was working in the lab, and I had wonderful colleagues, and one of them was like super withdrawn, and he's the last person who I thought would care about me, actually. And then I had a prescription for my antidepressants in the lab bench because I just came from a doctor. And then in Germany, it has like a very specific format of a red color paper, and he was passing by, and he was like, what is the medicine for? And I'm like, I was tired of not talking about it. So I said, it's against my depression, Yeah. And he said, really? I'm dealing with it through a therapy, but it's so important that you talk about it. So now, do you want to talk about it, actually, that, all the things which we're dealing with and so on and so forth. And yeah, so one event like this can start the whole destigmatization.
Yeah. 100%. Well, thank you so much, Olga, for that talk. That was so important. And please do make sure that you go in after this talk into the event chat and share that link awesome. for our attendees to fill the survey out. So thank you so much.
Thank you.